Hey there, entrepreneur. Welcome to the Scale to Sell podcast. This is episode number 27. Why don't businesses sell? So, Steve, I probably get this from you, but we're both big readers. And I, in particular, we both like thriller, like the action spy type deal. But I, in particular, like the detective things. You always joke me for watching Murder, She Wrote.
That's an old one.
I know it's Angela Lansbury. Come on, it's classic. But I love a good detective novel, right? Where you've got the clues, especially if it's well written, to where there's a lot of mystery to it. But if you paid attention to the details, you could see how things fit together to lead to the result of who did it and why and all the things that are going on. And to me, that's fascinating. I love that. I still love that, and read a number of them throughout the year. Today we're talking about why businesses don't sell. And we know from the stats that around 80% of businesses don't actually successfully sell. So what are some of the clues or the patterns that we could see forming in a business that would indicate to someone listening that their business is heading in that direction of if things keep going the way that they're going, it could lead to that unsellable business type situation?
There's a whole number of reasons. One of the closest to the top, if not the top, is unrealistic expectations of what the business is really worth. I've read an article, I heard of this or that, and they come back with some number that is just off the charts and it's not realistic. So unrealistic expectations of what they can harvest. And I understand they put their blood, sweat, and tears and risk everything into it, and they think it's worth more than it actually is.
We've seen those shows like the real estate shows where the person is trying to sell their house and they, again, kind of in the same vein, they think it's worth more, and it's almost like you take offense to a low ball offer in your opinion because you have a different perspective on where the value is and what that value really is. I can only imagine, as you're saying there, for someone who's not just owned a piece of property, but has invested their time and their effort and the resources to try to build up a company, that there's a lot that goes into it that in some ways it's tied to their identity, right? By saying that it's not worth as much as they think it is, it's somehow reflecting back on them and their own image. And there's a lot of emotional things that could go back to that. But it's important to have the right perspective on what the business is really worth.
And that's why we like our team, like Jeff Snell, our M&A expert, that will free of charge give you that opinion of value. And knowing what the market says your business is worth and what the market said 2 years ago may not be the same as what it says in 2 years from now. And there's things about transfer, how well can your business be transferred? Your clients, are they receptive to a new owner? Your team, will they stay in place? And so there's all those things. Are you replaceable? You're the main. So we've talked about all these things before, but number one in my mindset is unrealistic expectations of the business or about the true value of the business.
Yeah. So before we get to the other things that you started referencing there, I think what you said there is really important to understand is, what does the market say your business is worth? We're not looking at the expectations of you, but the person that is willing to buy the business, right? And they're looking at it from a perspective of getting it, and especially understanding the risks that are involved in that type of investment. If they're going to put the money up to be able to get their return on the investment, it's an important thing. And so what does the market say about what your business is worth? And what does it say about it currently, right? You were talking about the timing of it. Trends change, industries change, the economies change, all sorts of things differ. So what was true 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even a year ago might be drastically different today.
And I will tell you that right now is about as good a time as we've ever seen to exit from a business, either 100% exit or even a fractional exit. And because there's just money floating around, like I don't recall being out there in the marketplace before. Third party, private equity, family office models, and just companies looking to grow through acquisition. Or you're looking to, if you're an owner out there and you're looking to grow your business and that organic growth is not quick enough for you, the right You want to pay the right amount, not overpay for a business, because that could come back to haunt, or buy something that's not, you shouldn't be buying and blending in. But start with the price there. That's the number one thing in my mind. But I'll tell you the number two here in just a moment.
Well, what's the number two?
Number two is people think they want to retire. Spouse is putting pressure on them or whatever. Business owner recently owned the business for over 40 years. Wife wants them to exit in 2 years' time, but they're not ready to exit. They're not ready to exit. So they think because they're golfing buddies or somebody they hang around with is everybody else is retiring. Well, I think it's time for me. And they kind of derail. It sounds good at the time. Put it on the market, get it priced, and everything's going along, and then they go, cold feet. They get cold feet. They're just not ready because it's part of them. What are you after? Well, I used to own this, but now I'm just, I pick up the grandkids at 3:00 from school, get them off the bus or whatever. And so it's your identity. And so the identity, you may be able to harvest a good amount of money, but if you're not ready for that next phase of life, so many people derail their own exit just because they're in their mindset, they don't know what they will do.
Okay, that is not where I thought you were going to go with number two, so that was a little surprising to me. But I think what you're hitting on is really important, and we see that in the stats of the people who, of those that do successfully sell, a year later looking back with regret,
76%,
because they didn't do it the right way, in a way that is fulfilling. They didn't know what that next step was going to look like for them. They didn't take time to plan the personal aspects of
the three-legged stool.
exit. Yeah.
We talk about the three-legged stool, personal finances, business finance. How much do you have to harvest from the business to commingle with your personal finances? And then the third leg, equally important to keep everything balanced out a little bit, is what are you going to do? You've been used to working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, 6, 7 days a week.
And your identity tied to what you've been producing in the business for.
And you're gonna go from 100 miles an hour to sitting on the couch watching The Price is Right every day. That gets old, I would think, after a while.
There's a philosophical perspective shift that has to happen in the life of a business owner to understand that, yes, the business is important, but there is more to life than the business. So what does that look like for you? We've seen clients and some of our coaches deal with people who are wanting to get into other opportunities, sometimes starting a new type of venture, new business, or a charity type organization, or other types of work that have been meaningful to them, and now they get to do it in a greater degree with greater flexibility. Thinking about those things ahead of time is crucial to making sure that you've got something figured out to where you're not just going to nothing.
You got to have something to do with your time, whether it's hobbies, traveling, charity work, starting a new business, buying into a business with some of your windfall of money. And, business owners typically work longer than most employees do. Not always, but a lot of times, because, again, it's their identity. And or if you do it right, the business provides a pretty decent income in that lifestyle. And sometimes when they sell the business, the lifestyle cuts back a bit, and they don't like that either. So that might be another reason.
That's good. So one of the things that you referenced earlier was the transferability, that there may be a problem with the actual business being something that is able to be sold. What were you referring to in that regard?
Do you have the systems in place, people in place, contracts in place? Is the business transferable? You may be killing it out there, but if you're the main customer service rep, the main salesperson, the fire person that puts out every fire crisis that comes in there, if there's nobody in there, not a team of processes that can handle that, then what is transferable? Well, Steve, we're doing 10, 20, 30, $50 million a year, but is it transferable? Your numbers tell part of the story, but people, when they start looking under the hood, people that know about businesses are going to look at every angle of it. We talk about this intangible asset. So is it transferable? Meaning somebody, whether it's your kids taking over the business, can they run it? Yeah, but you don't, just because your employees relate to you doesn't mean they'll relate to your kids. They see them as, you're handing it off, your business off to somebody much younger than some of them, and they just maybe they don't like them. There is that, whether it's an internal sell or an external sell, processes makes the business more valuable more transferable it is, typically the more valuable it is.
Well, and you have to think, if you're in that position where the business is solely or very largely based on what you do, you're not as much a business owner as a business operator, right? And if you're the one selling the business and getting out of it, what is that next person coming in and buying? If you're the reason why the business has grown and you don't have a team of people like working like an engine that can produce more things when you're not there, then what are those people supposed to be buying?
100%. And if you don't want to exit, but you want to have time, I just want to have time. I came up with this thing about 4 or 5 years ago. I wanted to, after decades of working, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, early in the morning, late at night, on the road all the time, and driving and making a good income. My thing was I want to work less, make more, work less, make more. Well, that sound like a catchphrase and too good to be true, but putting people and processes in place that's actually happened for me. I'm down to only seeing clients 3 days a week, strategy sessions, recording radio shows, podcasts, typically on Monday, pickleball Friday, not working on Saturdays unless it's a once in a green moon type situation. So maybe you don't want to sell the business, but you just want to have a better life. And that's why putting these things in place, having systems and processes, things that are transferable. If your processes and your systems are in place, you can stay or you can go.
Yeah.
You can stay or go. And maybe that you want to cut back from 60 hours a week to 50 to 40 to 30, and then eventually it's running so well you just show up every now and again, right?
Well, and what you're able to do besides just enjoy your time and realize that your life is beyond what the business does, and that there's important things like family things and other opportunities that you have to be a part of, you realize that you get to fulfill a role now that is more than just the daily grind of things. You get to be someone who is helping develop the team. And it's not that you're not adding value to the business. You're still there and putting and contributing in there, but it's not solely dependent on you. And that's a game changer, both in terms of if you're looking to sell and having the right type of value there that's transferable, like we've been talking about, but also just being able to win at work and life, freeing up that time now so that you can actually enjoy things while you're in the midst of them and not just solely based on what's happening in the office.
And if something happens to you, I know somebody, a business owner recently, that unexpectedly died of a heart attack at age 60.
Yep.
And I noticed that the traffic around his business, I just heard it like 2.5 months later after he passed. Not over there all the time, but passed by it randomly. I just noticed the traffic wasn't as well, and found out just recently that he passed away in August. And knew him a little bit, not a whole lot, but enough to know enough about him. And now his wife owns the business. And my thought goes to, did he leave her in great shape? Is the business transferable? Did the business start to fade away because he's not there anymore? And so he doesn't have to worry about his personal retirement anymore because he's not with us anymore. But how about his family, his wife, his widow, and the kids and whoever else in the business?
Well, and that goes to the idea of succession planning. And a lot of people don't think, they're so busy on the day-to-day, like having to put out the fires for today, it's hard for them to think about what's coming up in the future and what does that look like and what happens if I'm not here. Not necessarily because of choice, but because of, in this case, a lack of a choice, right? And having things in place to where it can continue on and the next generation is actually set up for success to be able to take over.
Yep, to grow the business. If you have these systems and processes to make your business more valuable, more transferable, then whether you're doing an internal sale or external sale, you're going to hand it off. And you don't want to see, even if you sell it to somebody outside, you don't want to see your baby go away, fade into the sunset, and just close the doors. They run it in the ground. But here's another one that I don't know that we've talked about. You do the valuation. We look at their personal assets and we find out, yes, their business is worth X, but X is not enough to maintain that lifestyle. So another reason businesses don't sell is that when you do the full analysis, it's doing okay, but in order to maintain their lifestyle's going to have to take a major hit. Yep. And so now they're stuck.
They've got a gap.
They got a major income gap between what they're making now and what they will have once they harvest the sale of the business. And once they combine that with their personal assets, it's not enough. Steve, I can't live off that. Well, you want to retire, and we're just telling you, here are the numbers.
You know the options, yeah. The option is to make more or to reduce or spend less.
The challenge with that too is that it's sometimes when they're having to hang around there longer than they wanted to, then burnout sets in.
Especially if you don't have the systems in place, right?
And then the business starts going back the other way. Burnout sets in, their heart's not into it. Maybe there's partners, disagreements, and other factors in there. And the business that was up here now drifts down in value. One business recently, sales were off $100,000 a month recently, pulled the business back off the market for the second time. They went out. The two partners went out. They both agreed on that. They don't get along really well together. And but now their dilemma is they got to try to get it back up. And maybe that's possible, but that typically takes energy and expenses, investments, and other things. Yep. So there's any number of factors that can derail.
Though going back to the idea of succession planning, I think one of the challenges is people assume that handing a business off to the next generation is just as easy as saying it. Like, I'm just going to give it to the next generation. They're just going to, when I exit my role, they're just going to take the title, the nameplate on the desk and switch it out. And then that's it. And there's so much more that goes into what a successful transition looks like, that a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm just going to do an internal transfer, and they think that's the end of the conversation. But really, that's just the beginning of getting this process started, so that not only is your team ready, your customers are ready, but you're set up for success in the future. And that, talking about the legacy that you were mentioning earlier, that the legacy can continue and will succeed. And that's not the way the stats are currently showing with second and third generation businesses.
Second, to your kids, it's only about a 30% chance that it'll succeed beyond that. And then the numbers drop down lower than that when you get into second and third, fourth generations. The numbers are very small businesses that last that long. And another challenge is that if you're going to sell the business internally, typically to a kid, you're not going to get a windfall of money. You're going to finance it, self-finance it. That's what many of you do. We don't recommend that. We go through the process, get them set up on financing, and harvest some of that equity, because they may be great at running the business. You may get more money than you anticipated, but there's also the risk that it goes the other way. So there's a concern with that. I've seen some people delay putting it off, thinking their children were going to come out of college, step into the business, and then the kid changed their mind. And now they wasted 2, 3, 4, 5 years waiting for the kids to get back from college. And now they're down that path. And so it changes and alters their whole course or whatever. So it can work out well selling it to the next generation, bringing them on with the right mindset, but it also has its challenges.
So we've referred to some of these points before, but let's hit this one kind of more directly. And that's one of the indicators, one of the clues or the patterns that we could see that could lead to a business that's not going to sell is weak intangible capital. So oftentimes we think of tangible capital as being, the capital of the business, right? And we ignore some of the other aspects. So the tangible stuff, the real estate, the inventory, that sort of equipment, that sort of thing. But oftentimes for the value of the business, the intangible capital, the human capital, the teams that you have, the customer capital, the relationships that you developed, both in terms of the quality and the quantity of them, the structural capital, the systems and processes, the things that keep the business moving and operating in that way, and then the social capital, the culture of your team and how they work well together and all of those things are really the key drivers in many ways of the value of the business, which benefits you not only at exit, but also as the business is continuing to grow. So what do we mean by weak intangible capitals that could point towards a business not really selling the way that it could?
Customer relationships, no customer contracts, great customer turnover. Your numbers might be looking good on a P&L balance sheet or whatever. You're trending good, but you don't have long-lasting, long-term client relationships. your team, your personal team, it turns over too many times. How long has your operations manager been in place? Oh, they have only been here 6 months. How about the one before them? They were here for a year. So people like to see long-term relationships in your management team. They like to see contracts or at least what your relationship with your clients looks like.
Well, especially if you've got a high customer concentration.
One or two, three major clients, and if one of them leaves, then your numbers, then it takes a hit. You need to have some contracts. In the service industry right now, home service industry is very popular. A lot of money out there buying up, acquiring smaller companies, rolling them into making them bigger, then maybe selling them again in the future. But service contracts, if you're a plumbing, heating, air conditioning company, a roofing company, a pest control firm, a landscaping companies, or whatever it might be, they like to see service contracts. Yep. More service contracts you've got, how consistent have they been on what were they looking like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and what are they now? And people like that. And then the social media, social capital, looking on what is your view of the community about your business? Is it a good reputation? All these stuff matters. And again, it doesn't show up on a P&L balance sheet or even in the valuation of your business.
Well, and again, it goes back to, are we alleviating the concern of risk from the perspective of the buyer, or are we adding to it because of not having the teams in place with the quality people who are going to take the initiative, who can make the decisions and can get projects done on time and moving the company forward towards its goals and towards its vision? The customer relationships, are they the right quality? Do you have the repeat customers that keep coming back to you and that are not only satisfied customers, but almost become advocates of your brand, of referrals, who you are to company through referrals, and their friends, their family, whoever. All of those things speak volumes to the business and can really add substantial amounts of value and can differentiate yourself from others in your industry if you've got them in place.
Your own management team, the operations people, if you leave, will they leave?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a scary thing for an employee, even if they've been there for a long time, to have a thought of new ownership in some form or fashion. And what is it going to mean for their family? And where they had never thought about leaving before, if you don't have them anchored in there. And sometimes people will give them ownership or give them a stay bonus or other contractual benefits right there where they're motivated to stay on at least for a period of time, 2 years, 5 years. And so there's things you can do to motivate them while you're there. Why do some employers rarely turn over a team? They have a solid team and people don't go anywhere. And then why others always, you hear it all the time, small, medium, large corporations employ, attracting employees to you, retaining key talent, not turning over that talent. Why do some people do it and why others? Well, that's what our teams work on, helping you find the right talent, keeping it out there, building the value of your business, making it more profitable. And when you do exit, you're able to do it on your own terms.
Talking about that transition period and what concerns employees have, we've been asked the question before by owners, or they have expressed to us, not in the form of a question, but they've said, we want to talk, but also we don't want anyone to get wind of this in the company, of what the succession plans would look like or all these other things. And part of that is almost like we've had this conversation before where it's like people know that a transition is going to happen. Would you rather know that there's a plan in place and how this is going to look in the future generations? Or would you rather the instability of wondering if you're going to be out of a job because the owner is going to do this or that?
You can be upfront and honest with people and whatever, and making sure that you know that you have their best interest. If they treat it like family, they'll and typically do all these things, and we lay out a process for you, then they're not going to be. But they will eventually, if you're thinking about exiting, they will find word. The word will get out, leak out. I don't care how tightly lipped. They'll get a sign somewhere. They hear a rumor, and then it gets out there. But there's ways to overcome that and protect yourself now, protect your business, protect your largest asset, the business.
So the last one that we're going to talk about today is, in many ways, touches a lot of these other areas. And it's the lack of a team of people behind you that is helping guide your thought process from all the different perspectives that you're going to have to make when it comes to both the personal and the business side of things. So we call it a number of different things, from the family office to your exit team to those sorts of things. But it's bringing together experts like your financial advisor, like your insurance professional, like tax planner, M&A expert, the attorneys from personal and estate planning, and the M&A side of things, all of those things together. Not having those voices working with you to guide you through the growth and the exit of your business.
I can do it myself.
Is it's just painful every time I hear it. And then I see what happens when someone tries to DIY their business exit and it tanks.
It's like trying to sell your house. It's easier to sell your house yourself. Sometimes it's easy. Many times it's not. It sits on the market forever and you don't get the price that you originally thought. But having a team, you're right. Coming in and creating value. If you're leading up and you're wanting to sell the business in 2 years, 5 years, what can I do now to increase the value, to get a higher multiple, right? So let's say that we're able to reduce taxes and improve a bottom line where it's $500,000 a year into the bottom line times a 4 or 5 multiple, 5x. You've just created maybe $2.5 million in increased value. How much would that be worth to you in order to, be able to know the numbers are going up, trending in the right direction, a real number? So all these things come into play, and they protect your asset, and they will enhance the likelihood that you'll be able to sell the business on your own terms. You'll be able to harvest enough money to commingle with your personal assets to sell off into the sunset and maintain that lifestyle. And or even if it's an internal sale to your children or some other management team or whatever, to ensure their success is by having these things. And it sounds like it's complicated, but you're already working on things anyway. You got to start working smarter instead of harder. I found that out a long time ago, 40 years ago, and struggled in business until I started finding mentors that would lead me down the path, and it just made my life so much easier. And that's all we are here in Scale to Sell, and our team of experts, as you mentioned, tax planners, not your CPA. Tax planners, forward-thinking, advanced strategies to mitigate tax man now, to drive a higher multiple and keep more of the sell of the business in your pocket when you leave. The M&A expert, not somebody that's done it for 5 minutes, but somebody's got a long track record of doing it. The attorneys and the coaches, marketing, whatever you guys need to grow your business. We have a network of people here at Scale to Sell that we can help drive profitability, increase the value, and harvest equity when it's your time to transition and march down the street and go do something else.
I think part of what makes this conversation so important is that you get this stark contrast of what is possible based on which path you take. And if you're looking at your business and you're seeing the things that we're listing off as like the clues, the patterns that could lead to the death of a sale of your business. And you're like checking them off like, oh, that's also there. Yeah, I don't have that in place. Or you've got the other side where you're like, this is in my favor. I've got these things. I'm marking these things off. I'm making progress on these things. I'm making the timing of my sale irrelevant because I'm always prepared for it. You really get a distinct picture of what is possible when you focus on the right things. Going off of your quote there, and focusing on the right things. I love the quote that productivity isn't about getting things done. It's about getting the right things done.
No doubt.
That's certainly the case for business owners when it comes to growing and exiting your business. And there's a lot of things that are on our to-do lists that may be necessary to get done, but probably aren't necessary for you to be the one to get them done. There are some things, though, like what we've been talking about today, that are at the top of the list of things that you should be working on in order to create a business that is saleable, that you can have and exit on your terms.
Or you're looking to grow and have the right teams and processes in place to be able to grow. Because if you're not ready to exit, you're probably not ready to grow either.
Yeah.
Right. And so all those things. And right now, if you're looking to grow your business, we have companies out there that our team has listed that in your community, that if you're whatever industry you're in, we could probably find some way. And one way to grow quickly, doing it right, is to acquire another well-run company that has value, that has all these things that we talked about in place, and you could grow your business very rapidly. And then somebody else will come in the future and buy you up for an even higher multiple, because the larger your business is, typically the easier it is to sell, especially if you're on a good growth rate and have all the things in place that we've talked about today.
As always, we say that the best place to get started is with that free evaluation that Steve was talking about earlier. Our team is ready to have that conversation with you to get you from one of the most credentialed M&A experts in the country this evaluation that gives you a starting point to know exactly where you're at and gives us a chance to look at, okay, where do we go from here? And so scale2sell.com/discovery. That's scale2sell.com/discovery, or click the link in the show notes below. Fill out the form and let's get the conversation started. Let's move from the death of a business sale and seeing all of the clues that led to the demise of that opportunity to having something that is not only a blessing now while you're still growing and wanting to work in there, but when you're ready to exit, you're good to go. And you've got something that is meeting your needs from, like you were talking about earlier, a personal, a financial, and a business perspective. So again, scale2sell.com/discovery. Until next time, keep scaling.
Thank you for listening to Scale to Sell with Adam Burton and Steve Burton. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.scale2sell.com or give us a call at 757-313-4080. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Scale to Sell. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing, tax, legal, or other advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified professionals with any questions you may have regarding your personal or professional plans. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome.